Hello and welcome to Around the Lens, episode 118. I am your host, David J. Murphy. Joining me is my co-host extraordinaire, Mr. Zach Roberts. Hello, Zach.
Hello, how goes it?
It goes very well. Happy to have you on.
I can't believe it's 118. Dear Lord.
I know, right?
I don't know why. I know it's been counting, but 118 just seems, for some reason, oh, God. That's a lot.
Crazy. We've been doing this a long time. No sign of stopping. Can't stop us.
Can't stop, won't stop.
Hello,
there
Jimmy
it is.
Shea.
There it is.
Matthew loves you as well, I'm sure.
Jimmy's one of my favorite people. Hey, Jimmy.
Nice. Well, we got a great show for you tonight on this Around the Lens, the internet's only live weekly visual journalism roundtable podcast coming at you every Monday night, normally at 8 p.m. Eastern. So thank you all for tuning in tonight. Hope you enjoy the show. My guest this evening is Matthew Aaron Callahan. Matthew, please tell us about yourself.
Hey, guys. My name is Matthew Callahan, and I'm a visual storyteller for the United States Marine Corps. I've been doing this for about 4 or 5 years now. I do a lot of photo, I do a lot of video, and basically I tell the Marine Corps story. I also have a kind of a weird, expansive toy photo project that I've been working on for the last 3 years called Galactic Warfighters. It's kind of like my love letter to the military and Star Wars.
Absolutely, and I do want to talk to you about that. Of course, you've been killing it with the Galactic Warfighters, got a huge Instagram following. Definitely want to talk to you about that. And you're going to be, that's going to be our main key thing we're going to talk about during the show is about creativity. We live in the world of journalism, but, there has to be room for creativity in there as well. Not on the journalism side, but in what we do as, essentially, I think, artists. But before we get into that, I do want to briefly mention the fact that today this show is appearing the day after April Fool's Day and 2 days after my birthday. So, hey, it's my birthday. I got this neat shirt.
Happy belated birthday.
Back cat. So, came from a friend. He always sends me goofy stuff on my birthday. So, but let's talk a little bit about all the April Fool's stuff we saw on the internet. Of course, the internet is practically made it a cottage industry of doing April Fool's jokes. Don't believe anything you see on the internet, especially on April Fool's. Let's talk about what we saw out there. I'll throw it to you, Matt. Is there anything in particular you saw on the internet you'd like to mention?
Yeah, no. Let's see. I'm gonna send you the photograph here. But basically, yesterday, Drew Gracie, forgive me, Drew, if I'm pronouncing your last name incorrectly. I apologize. This is the first time I said it out loud. I just Drew. I sent this to you, David. This picture, but he posted. So I don't know his affiliation with Sony. I think he's one of maybe the brand ambassador or something like that. One of them. But he posted a picture, a really slick Photoshop job here. What looks like some marketing materials for the Sony Alpha 8S. And let me just run down some of the specs of this fictitious camera. Let's see. It's got dual shift ultra sensitive high resolution sensor with ISO of 3,276,800 at a resolution of 10,328 by 7760 or 10K and 12K in photo mode. It's just a slew of other ridiculous specs on this camera, and it's just again I posted the photo for you to post up. I don't know how to actually do that, but it was good. It tricked me for a good second because the way he framed it was like, hey, Sony just announced this, so I figured why not? I'll let it be known. And he threw that photo up, and apparently it got picked up by a couple of photo blogs and websites, kind of in on the joke. But apparently it spread pretty far and wide. So that was pretty funny. I had a good laugh about that. Thanks, Drew.
It's very well done. I mean, it is, it looks like standard ad copy, you expect from a new camera. I love the liquid cooling design. That's pretty inventive. I haven't seen that in a camera before, so.
That was the thing that really, I was looking at it, and I was kind of not really paying attention to the fact it was April Fool's Day, but when it got to the liquid cooling, I was like, wait a second.
Yes, exactly.
Is this thing the size of a desktop computer?
Science comes into play here.
Yeah. Physics.
4K raw at 480 frames per second. Yeah. Be a little ways off. What's funny is all these specs are totally achievable in the next 10 years. So it wouldn't be surprising to me if we see a camera with these type of specs, in our lifetime, if not in the next 5 to 10 years. So,
yeah.
But it is something nice to dream. There is also another similar camera or similar type of ad on this April Fool's post on Petapixel. Let me pull it up really quick. I believe it was the A6700 or something like that. I'm not a big Sony guy. Yeah, A6700, 6K at 60 frames per second, full HD at 240, which nowadays doesn't really seem like much when, Samsung has a phone that can do 960 frames per second. But, that's, I think, a little bit more modest and semi-realistic, I guess, in some people's eyes. I'm hoping the GH6 is a 6K shooter, but, that's just me. Zach, were there any fun April Fool's Day jokes you saw, photo or otherwise?
I'm just saying I really want that up on Petapixel has the list as well, and they have a Nikon D850 shaped roll bag, like a carry-on bag.
Yeah, that was funny.
But CS Muncie, because I also work as a fact checker and as a researcher, so April Fool's Day is like my living hell. For most part, because it's like, no, that's not true. No, stop. But the problem now with the internet is that they continue existing and then they get reshared the next day. So then you have to go through and like, oh my God, it's hell. A friend of mine is also the managing editor of Snopes. And she was like, this is basically the day that we just sit and drink. Like, it's out there. Today is actually, I think it's like International Fact Checkers Day. Which is appropriately, it's like a hashtag, you can search it. But CS Muncie, the one that bothered him the most, was Photo Rumors posted a very good diagram and like press release. I'm sharing in the thing here of the Contax digital rangefinder camera. To be announced at Photokina, pictures, specifications, and more. And they have like a breakdown of the whole thing, like you would normally get with a camera when it's announced. Here, I'll post it in the page here too. So there you go. It was a pretty good one, especially coming from a rumors website where you're like, I don't know whether any of this stuff is ever true. That one is rough. Oh my God. The Contax, you got to check out the way. I'm just checking it for the first time as well. The Contax hybrid viewfinder design is hilarious. The science and the mirrors behind it, if you look at the link, it is kind of amazing.
That's a lot of mirrors right there. I think.
Yeah, exactly. In such a tiny camera too.
Yeah, so I think the rule of thumb is just don't believe anything you see on April Fool's, and if you really want to mess with people, announce something real on April Fool's and just let them speculate. But I don't think there were any real announcements that I could think of.
If I was the White House, or if I was a senator or congressman who had some like random thing, they're like, oh crap, this news story is going to break, I'd be like, no, it's going to be April 1st. Drop it. It's Easter. It's Easter, so no one's paying attention. Yeah. And then everybody be confused, and you could be like, it's fake news. It's fake news.
Yep, you could definitely do that.
Speaking of Easter, did anybody shoot anything on or about Easter? Any Easter egg hunts or any Easter photos? Anything fun like that?
My wife and I cooked dinner and had a lot of champagne. Had a good day. That was about it.
Nice. I just mostly did some portraits of my kid. That's about it.
That's awesome.
Anyways, all right. Well, let's.
I was at a casino, so I couldn't actually use a camera.
Oh, sure you could. Just gotta, keep it hidden. What casino were you at?
Turning Stone. It's along the New York Thruway.
Okay. Cool. All right. Well, let's get on with the actual show. I want to talk to you, Matt, about creativity. So, of course, you have the Galactic Warfighters series on Instagram. Talk to us a little about this project, how it kind of got started. What was your inspiration, of it? What was the inspiration for it, I should say? And how has sort of the reaction been? Obviously, you've been doing this for multiple years now, but kind of like talk to me about the whole genesis of the project and where it is today and how has been received.
Yeah. I was actually going to use the G word there. So the whole thing started. So as it's kind of evolved, it really it's found its voice. It really is again just kind of my love letter to my fascination with the military and my just diehard love of Star Wars, and particularly the militaries of Star Wars. It kind of all comes together in that way. But it started at the Defense Information School in Maryland, and I was there for the basic public affairs course, and we had like a 2-week period of instruction that was just, photography, the very basics.
Did they
so
teach
one of our
film when you were there, the first school? They still teach film then, or had they gotten rid of it by then?
No, everything is all digital. I don't remember what year they stopped doing film, but I think it was like maybe the mid 2000s, late 2000s. I'm not exactly sure, but we were learning. They issued us Nikon D7000s. They issued some students Nikon. I think it was the D300 or the D300S. The little crop frame cameras. They were kind of fun.
Did they force you to shoot on manual your first 2 weeks, or whatever?
Yes, everything was manual. So manual focus, manual exposure settings, and all that other stuff. And
they could check you too, because they could just look at your metadata if you were lying.
Precisely. And I guess maybe that's something you might have been able to get away with film. But then again, I'm not really sure how. I haven't really delved in film or cameras that use film, but I don't know how well the autofocus worked on those. But we had an assignment, and it was basically go out and demonstrate, how to freeze motion, and that how to, get motion in your shot using a slow shutter speed. And I don't have them with me anymore, but it was like a little 6-inch Stormtrooper. One of my roommate at the time at the Marine detachment, I was like, hey, can I borrow that from me? He's like, yeah, sure. So I took it out. We set him up as if he was like kind of diving for cover, and I just had one of my fellow students just kind of launch snow at him, and it created these really cool particle effects. Like the frozen motion, everything was going nuts, and it looked like he was just diving into the dirt. And so that was the first real photo I made. That kind of started the project, and as StinPost went on, I finished the public affairs course, went into the broadcasting course, and I just kept photographing. And at first, it was just kind of like a means for me to practice like a myriad of different techniques, especially with long exposure and like light painting, because I didn't have a whole lot of equipment to use. So I was basically in my barracks room, and I was lighting these figures, going like 6, 10, 15-second exposures, and using strobes through Listerine bottles as gels, and in a bunch of like cologne bottles and all this other crazy stuff to like get these really, really cool dramatic effects with the photos. And then when I'd go outside, we'd just, work with dirt, we'd work with snow, whatever we had available to kind of just like make these crazy scenes come to life. And then fast forward a couple of years, my wife at the time, she was like, I don't know if it was a lie or an honest mistake, but she was like, so you're going to stop doing this, right? Because she was a little, it's
quit
just
playing
like
with your little toys, your dollies.
Yeah, a grown man playing with toys.
God forbid.
And so that never stopped. I still do it to this day. I haven't had a lot of time to do it the last year or so with a deployment and just being busy.
Wait, did you take your action figures out to the desert with you? I mean, I'm sure they would have frowned upon that. I'm sure they would have hazed you for that.
I had a couple of. I have here. So this is what I photographed today. These guys.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
So I had a couple of these guys out in Syria with me, but I really just never found the time to photograph them. They just stayed in my sea bag the entire time.
Oh, sad.
But so the project it really started to take shape and take I was photographing a bunch of different fictitious figures, like from the Halo universe, some Lego stuff. Just kind of pulling from a bunch of different properties and photographing them my own way. And then I just kind of ground down on Star Wars, and I began writing captions for these photographs in like the same way that, a war correspondent or wartime photojournalist would write captions for any real world conflict. So I set up these scenes, and I would caption them. I'd make up little micro stories about what was going on, with like light tethers to the Star Wars universe itself. like clone troopers engage, insurgents outside their forward operating base on Tatooine or something like that. Or like if it's the Empire, they're fighting insurgents there as well. And yeah, I started to, when I got to Syracuse, I was there for a year. That's when the project really started to take shape, and like the visual narrative and style that I kind of that it has now, that's when it really started to get solidified. And it just happened to coincide with the release of the first Star Wars film in the last, decade? When did Revenge of the Sith come out? Was that 2006, 2007?
2009, maybe? Or earlier? I honestly don't remember.
Revenge of the Sith?
Yeah, that was... Yeah, we all
only there was a way to find answers to questions. I mean...
2005, Revenge of the Sith, yeah.
In over a decade. So the project started to really pick up steam, and in November of 2015, November of 2015, everybody was looking for Star Wars content in ahead of the release of the film, and a bunch of outlets kind of stumbled upon my work, and they were like, "This is really cool," and it got a lot of exposure that way. It's kind of like a neat little, "Hey, look at this dude doing this thing with photos," and like there's kind of like that military tie to it, and that's kind of how it kind of blew up on Instagram, and every time now there's like kind of like a big Star Wars event, like I'll find my stuff getting like kind of shown, like Reddit. My stuff is like always circulating on Reddit, like every 3 quarters or so, like it gets thrown up on the Star Wars page.
It's like, look what I just found, guys.
Yeah, and that's kind of the beauty of the internet, because like it recycles, but it's just it's the internet, so a bunch of new people are seeing the project, and it's been kind of cool to see people's responses to it, and especially like with veterans and active duty service members, because I've gotten a lot of emails from vets and from just people serving now that kind of like they're like, wow, this picture speaks to my deployment or my experiences in the military, and that's been really cool to see and to hear about. So it's pretty neat.
Nice.
It's been a good time.
And like obviously beyond that, has it garnered any attention from the Lucasfilm, or has anybody from the Star Wars Corporation ever like contacted you and said, "Hey, I saw your stuff and good job, looks pretty cool," or "Hey, can we hire you for our project," or something? I don't know.
I wish. There was a guy at Industrial Light and Magic who reached out to me, and he was like, "Hey, yeah, he did some of the lighting work for the Clone Wars show. He's done a bunch of other movies since. He's one of the those really highly specialized folks, and like the entire VFX team that does like a very specific thing. I think it was like how light interacts with objects. It's crazy." And he reached out to me and he was like, "Hey, yeah, I work at ILM and just want to say, really love your stuff. I worked on Clone Wars. It's really cool to see what you're doing with the figures." And I guess he said, a couple of people over there like were tracking on it and thought it was really neat. But that's about the extent that goes. And I think especially considering I use real world weapons, and some of the photos that I have made and like kind of the context of the images and the stories behind them are not exactly Disney friendly.
But you started before Disney owned George Lucas, so
No, I didn't. 20. Oh yeah, no, technically I did. But fun little anecdote, and I don't know where I heard this story. Maybe it was from. I don't know who it was from exactly, but apparently, like part of the justification for the merger with Disney, like Disney
was your work. Lucasfilm. That's amazing that you helped push those two entities together.
I wish, but there was a big question surrounding the use of guns in Star Wars, and apparently Disney justified it by like, those aren't guns, they're blasters, and that was like their workaround for justifying, having really, a really violent kind of universe in their wheelhouse as a property.
Yeah, they're not smoking cigarettes; they're death sticks.
Precisely.
I mean, obviously you are coming to a crossroads in your life and your career right now. You're looking to leave the Marine Corps to do something else. Do you want to pursue like filmmaking or 3D or Star Wars or anything like that? Like if ILM or Disney called you right now and said, "Matthew, we've seen your work. We're going to bring you on to the next Star Wars. We're doing a live action Star Wars thing. We want you a part of it." Would that be like your dream job, or what do you want to do? post Marine Corps?
That would be awesome to work as kind of maybe like an advisor for a Star Wars film. I can't wait for them to make a live action Clone Wars film. It's going to happen.
Well, the great thing now is there's going to be a new Star Wars
Eventually.
movie every other year. So, I mean,
Yeah.
there's so
For
many more
the
opportunities.
rest of our lives.
Exactly, for as long as it's profitable.
And that brings me to another funny anecdote. Every year every year a new Star Wars film comes out, like the main episodes. I take my grandmother to go see them because she introduced me to them when I was little.
Nice.
And when we went to see The Force Awakens, she was like, "Oh, I'm not going to live to see the end of this." And I just looked at her and I was like, "Nana, none of us are."
That's right, because there's going to be 3 more after this, and then 3 more after that, and then 3 more
There's
until the end of time.
so much money to be had,
Oh,
and it
my
never will
goodness.
stop.
Yeah, maybe Disney will take a 5 or 6 year break just to let the dust settle a little bit, but I think that would be in their best interest. But yeah, if they as I look at transitioning out of the service, there's one thing I know is that everything is highly specialized in the movie industry and just production generally speaking, in photojournalism. You can't spread too far out. You got to kind of specialize in something. So right now I'm at that point where like, I mean, I love producing video, I love editing, I love photographing, but I got to kind of grind it down to something specific if I want to make any kind of money going forward, which is kind of depressing. But that's for like the bigger end, the industry stuff. But as far as being able to do all those things, being like, a multiple trick pony, there's always freelance work and, working in small production teams. So I've got a couple people on the outside already, Jimmy Shea being one of them. Looking forward to maybe possibly working with him in the future and a couple of other folks to just make some really epic stuff.
And Jimmy Shea is obviously watching our show, but who is he?
Jimmy Shea is an Emmy award-winning storyteller. He was a combat correspondent in the Marine Corps. Well before my time, actually. I watched his videos, his day in the life videos about the Marine Corps before I came into the Marine Corps.
Wow.
So yeah, that's really weird. And yeah, he's since worked for All Hands. He works for All Hands magazine right now, which is the Navy's major tentpole storytelling publication. And before that, he worked at Airman, which was the Air Force's. And yeah, the guy kind of thinks in sequence. So. And he's just a good dude. It's really cool working with him. We've done a couple little things here in the past. We did like a thing about Subarus because we're both Subi bros. And yeah, so him and Tyler Main and Clayton Filipovich and a couple other folks in that area, they're all doing great stuff. And it would be cool to link up with them when my service is over here.
Yeah, no, definitely. You mentioned an interesting point about specialization versus diversity. And I would say almost the opposite, depending on what you want to do. Like, if you want to take and get into a large corporation or an organization, yeah, you need to be specialized because usually they're looking for someone who can do a specific thing. But if you're looking to go, like you said, the more freelance route or kind of just own your own identity on the internet, if you want to like build, your own Matthew Callahan YouTube channel, Facebook presence, all that stuff, then being diversified is your best attribute because you know everything that you need to know about the entire sphere of sort of creativity, and then you can hire down when you grow bigger. But it all depends on what you want to do. Obviously, that's a hard, long road to go that may or may not lead to success, where it's like if you want, obviously, the security and comfort that comes from an actual job, you have to separate those things side by side. We had Ethan Rocky, another Marine Corps combat correspondent, on a few weeks ago, and he basically took the full-time lifestyle because the freelance, it's a tough road to hoe, as Zach will attest.
Yes, I can.
Definitely.
But you've been in a long time, Matt. Have you thought about, you've been in for more than 10 years now, right?
It'll be 9 years in July, about the time I get out.
Okay.
Yep, 9 years.
There you go. As long as you get out before the 10-year mark, you're fine. After the 10 years, though, you're never going to hear a stream of people say, "Come on, man, you just did 10 more years."
Yeah,
10 more years of your life. Come on.
It's been a long 10 years. Jeez.
Do you think you'll maintain any sort of service in the reserves, or do you think you'll just cut ties completely?
There's definitely the possibility of not the Marine Corps Reserves, but maybe the Air National Guard. That seems like a sweet gig. I talked to C.S. Muncie about that not too long ago. He says it's fairly flexible, and yeah, I just even as I'm getting out of the military, I feel like I'm not done telling the military's story. That's my wife.
You'll have plenty of opportunities to do that, outside even maybe
mm-hmm.
more so as you not have to do all the other military things. But I highly recommend the Guard as an option. I did the Guard after I left the Marine Corps after 8 years, and it's a great option. There's a lot of great Guard bases out there, and it does allow you that flexibility to continue to work full time and still maintain that military time for hopefully an eventual retirement, even if it's a Guard retirement or reserve retirement. But,
absolutely.
So good luck with that. Good luck with your outside endeavors. Do you think you'll continue the Galactic Warfighters thing even after you leave?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I think so. What's funny about that too is with that project is, again, it really started to find its voice, and I really started to produce a lot for it when I went to Syracuse. And it wasn't because I was like, it wasn't Syracuse itself. It was just kind of like that break from the military lifestyle for that period of time. I had more time to work on it. So as I transition out of the service here, I think I'm going to have a lot more time on my hands to actually dive back into the project. So it's definitely not done. It's ongoing. But for now, it's kind of on a little bit of a pause. But as soon as I exit the service, it's probably going to see an uptick.
Okay. Cool. Yeah. One of our former panelists and watchers right now, Alex Tetrialt, says, when you leave the service, don't get fat. Keep on working out.
I'm struggling with that right now. It's like kind of like senioritis when you're in high school. I'm still working to lose the weight I have now.
Did you drop your pack? Come on, be honest.
I have not dropped my pack yet.
Good.
No. That's reserved for. It's like kind of sliding off the shoulder slightly, maybe here a little bit, but
one shoulder sort of.
Yeah. I got a bunch of junior Marines under my charge right now, and a lot of them are just coming into the fleet, Marine Force, and they have no idea what they're doing. So I'm just trying to fire hose them with as much as I possibly can before I leave. And it's been an interesting experience. So I give it to them in little divots, like, just every day. I'm just like, hey, reach into my pocket. Here's a hip pocket class for you. Just little things here and there all the time.
There you go.
So
right. Hey,
I'll never.
Hey, Marines, circle up, take a knee, sit kneel bend. All right, let's go.
That's basically what I do. Yeah, you know. Yeah. I'll just come into the bay with a whiteboard, and I'll be like, okay, here's basic camera functions. Here's what a frame rate means, and also we're going to go over how an infantry battalion is structured. There you go. Nice. That's our little PME for the day.
Nice, I like that. Zach's just like, I have no idea what anyone is saying.
There are words. No.
Zach, no.
I've known CS since he was in middle school, so I know most of this stuff.
There you go. Zach, do you have any questions for Matt about anything we've talked about before we move on?
Actually, it's funny. I already noticed that comicbook.com and my buddy Brandon already did back in 2016 write about your photos.
Brandon did.
Yeah. So, because I literally was like about to send it over to Comic Book, and I'm like, have we covered this? Because it's crazy we haven't. I'm like, just Googled. Yeah, it's there. Yeah, no, I just tweeted it. I just tweeted it at Mark Hamill, who for some unknown reason likes half of the things. If I tag him on something, he'll either comment or
he'll like
it. So hopefully, maybe it'll get another bump from that. But yeah.
That'd be really cool. I love Mark Hamill. He's a phenomenal presence on the internet. He's fantastic. He's crazy, and I love him for it.
I love his honesty. I mean, we're not a movies podcast, but what'd you think of that second Star Wars movie? What was it called? The Last Jedi. Any thoughts?
The Last Jedi? Oh, I have so many thoughts on that one. Oh man, I'll try to keep this curt. The Last Jedi, in my opinion, not a popular opinion, was the most Star Wars movie ever made. It was the most Star Wars movie ever made. It took fan theories, it took expectations, and it put them in a trash bag and threw them out the 110th story window and was like, we're doing what we're going to do. We're going to make a great story. We're going to make a great film that's just going to have to be about Star Wars. That's my elevator version of my thoughts on that.
Yeah.
Agreed.
I enjoyed it. I mean, I can see why. Like, I've watched a lot of the critical analysis videos, and I can see what some people didn't like about it and the way they treated some characters. But at the end of the day, it's like it is what it is, and we're gonna get. I think there's gonna definitely be a reaction to it in the next episode, but I don't think it's gonna be like a complete 180. I think you're gonna see you're gonna see some more fan service, some more. Back to center with the next one, just because of the reaction and how divisive it was. But I enjoyed it completely. I mean, I like the Star Wars films. I've never been like a diehard. I don't dress up. I don't go to the cosplay. I don't go to the conventions. But I've always enjoyed the series, and I liked it for what it was. Definitely. Yeah. I like how it upended your expectations and gave you something different. Because I think we would have all probably enjoyed a movie that was what we wanted, what we thought we wanted, which is the typical story arc and everything. But I think at the end of the day, wouldn't have pushed the narrative forward. And I don't know what that would have meant for future Star Wars films. So,
no.
I mean, it did make $1.3 billion. So I think it was quite popular.
A little bit.
And they gave Johnson his entire own trilogy before the film even came out. They were like, Kathleen Kennedy was like, "You got it, bro. Go do you."
I can tell you. I mean, this is all fandoms. Whether it be Nikon, whether it be Star Wars, whether it be whatever. It's like anybody who ever tries to like move the genre in any way, shape, and form is going to get a lot of hate. But then they did a really good job. They made a much, much better film than Lucas had made in 38 years. So, or 37 years. So, I mean, but anyway.
Anyways, let's talk more about journalism. Let's go back to the journalism talk, but we can always talk about Star Wars later after the show.
Sorry, you got two hardcore fanboys apparently. Yeah.
What's that?
Just two hardcore Star Wars fans here. Our bad. My bad.
No, we can all go on Zach's other show that he does on movies.
The Emerald City Video Podcast? Yeah, sure.
Right. Anyway, Zach, you brought up a interesting topic, so I want to throw it over to you to introduce. It's all about the Denver Post. So go ahead and kind of talk about the Denver Post. What's going on there?
Yeah, I mean, the Denver Post is, yet another one of the stories of the newspapers of late laying off a ton of people. But what this actually ends up pointing out is that it's yet another one of the newspapers being bought out by hedge funds or venture, like not VC, but or vulture funds, depending on what you want to describe them, and basically doing kind of almost the same thing. Doing the same thing that Toys happened to Toys R Us, happened to Hostess, all these things. A large corporation that's easy to buy, it's on the cheap end of buying, and then gets dumped with a lot of debt and gets dumped with a lot of hot, really, really over the top CEO and board salaries. This is Trump. This is what happened to LA Times. Thank God, the unions won out, and literally, saying Chicago Sun-Times almost had it happen to it, but luckily, Marcus has a job now, so he's over there. But what's happening is that these newspapers are profitable. They're just not profitable in the way that corporations, that Amazon is profitable. And that, for some reason, that's not good enough. Understandably, for hedge funds, we live in capitalism, unfortunately. But so with a hedge fund, they need to make massive profits, and it's always on the short term. And that's the opposite of what a newspaper should do, at least in my opinion. I think any newspaper can make a good amount of money. It's just that they're not going to make a boatload of money. And one of the problems for our field is that the number one place that for some reason people don't work in the newspaper or journalism industry think you can cut costs is photographers, because we seem to be, everybody has cell phone. You can pull cell phone photos from, Twitter or whatever else. And that's another place that happened. The Denver Post lost a ton of, I think they lost almost all their photography staff. And it's basically just yet another story of what's been happening across the country. And one of the few things that's, good things that's been coming out of it is that, the workers are finally united, however you feel about unions, that it seems to be good for journalism, because the newspapers that are actually unionizing are actually seemingly succeeding. LA Times is doing better than ever. The Chicago Sun-Times is doing better than ever. Hell, Gawker is actually considering coming back, and same thing. The Gothamist is potentially coming back as well. Again, thanks to what union organization did beforehand. So now, if we could ever get freelance photojournalists to unionize, something that literally I think 118 episodes. I think I've had at least one mention on every episode about. But yeah.
Yeah, you mentioned that.
Every
and I
single
mentioned the
person,
GH5, so it's
and every single other guest has always laughed at me because we all know it's like herding cats on LSD, So,
so obviously this is interesting because it's a dramatic and also visual representation of the lack of jobs and the loss of jobs. Not just the Denver Post, but probably at all major organizations that were traditional newspapers or whatnot. And, when I left the Marine Corps, this was just starting. This was, the 2007, so it was at the beginning of the recession, and things were going downhill. And, but I was looking for a job in photojournalism. I'm like, I'm going to get out. I'm going to go to New York City. I'm going to get a job as a photojournalist and make it big in the city. And it didn't really work out like that. But that's fine. I'm okay with the way it worked out for me. But, Matt, you're coming into an area, and it's like you don't have any machinations about potentially being a photojournalist at a newspaper or at any sort of photojournalism type organization, do you? Or is that something you want to pursue?
One day I will. My wife will kill me, but I mean, one day I will embed. I will save up enough money to pay for the life insurance and everything else to embed with Marines one day for a period of time, and just tell their story as a civilian.
Right.
That's about as aspirational as I get when it comes to photojournalism. That's about it. Because I don't.
Because I mean, when I left, it was still relatively, there were still jobs obviously out there, but now in your day and age, I mean, is it scary for you at all to look at the industry the way it is and think about the photo jobs? I mean, because you're talking more about filmmaking. You want to specialize in filmmaking, which I do think there is a lot of market for. But, photography and straight photojournalism, I think it's much more dire. What are your thoughts on that? Because, I mean, you said you want to focus on something. You need to focus and zero in. Are you going to focus on filmmaking? Is that your focus?
I think absolutely, just video, filmmaking, video production, small productions, small storytelling, because I just, as you guys just said before, there are no jobs in photojournalism, and
there are few. They're just few and far between. I want to make that we can be very negative and dire and down on this show, and we've gotten criticism about it. I want to say anyone interested in doing the world of photojournalism, there are job out there. You can find the job.
Yeah.
There is job, but that's there aren't many.
By the way, what's your wife's first name?
Gabrielle.
She commented, if you didn't notice, and said, "Oh, right about when you were talking about going to embed," she said, "Oh, really? LOL." So that might be a conversation if you hear your phone buzzing in a minute.
Let me put that on the overlay so everybody can watch. Everybody can see what's no.
We've talked about it before. Let me go back to where is it? Hold on.
But I mean, to talk about one of the problems with the jobs is, and this is something if you watched John Oliver last night, and I think he talked about, or if you've seen that video about Sinclair Broadcasting, it was been on every single cable network and been on everywhere, where they're given the network is given the same script to read out about across all local news. So if you go on, one thing I've been meaning to write about this, but if you go on journalism jobs right now, I'm looking, there's a couple states that I'm looking to try to move to that I'd be okay to even take a lower level job, just something outside of my field a little bit. Almost every single job you're going to find there is Sinclair Broadcasting when it comes to videography, when it comes to video camera work, or the social media people, where it's the social media journalists, where you're multimedia journalists, as I think they're usually called. But that's one of the problems, is that pay starts nothing. It's almost better to go become a teacher in West Virginia. and or sorry, I just literally covered that story. So, but or or any other thing. So it's actually one of the problems is it's harder and harder to get a job working at a kind of a paper that you're going to last at. And one of the reasons why Sinclair Broadcasting isn't creating new jobs. They're not hiring more people. What they're doing is they buy the companies, they buy the local TV stations, and then they lay off the staff that's been there for years that are either union or just been there for a while, so they're making a decent amount of money, and then hire new people. A lot of times it's crazy if you look at, one of the things we always joke about if you're looking at jobs is like the amount of experience that you're supposed to have for an entry-level job is always kind of hilarious. Like, 5 years experience, for, an entry-level job. But what they're looking for is like basically we'll train you on how to do camera work. They're not asking for anything because they're also not paying anything. Because I've looked in some of these things and it's like starting in the high 20s, in cities, not in like, some random small town in Ohio where you could desperately get by on that maybe, but like actually in cities. So, it's basically, it's people, they're wiping out the kind of experienced class and then hiring new people. Which is the same thing newspapers have been doing for a while now with, places. They'll wipe out the old staff and then hire a bunch of new people, which is why if you're on Instagram, you always get, post a news photo and you get those poor producers or whatever they're called that'll be like, hey, can we use your photo for in perpetuity and forever for free?
We won't pay you for it. You'll just we'll pay you in exposure.
Exactly. Well,
yep.
Exposure bucks.
Yeah.
Indeed. Well, let's move on our last topic this evening. We joked a little about wildly ambitious cameras that were released or mentioned during April Fools, but there are some very interesting camera technology that is not necessarily out where you can buy it, but being experimented on, and I think shows that some companies are thinking about the future and trying to push the boundaries here. And so there's a story here about a 120 megapixel sensor, CMOS sensor from Canon. I know, right? That is, again, it's still all like very notional and experimental, but it is neat to kind of see what this camera can do. It shoots 13,280 by 9,184, so 60 times higher resolution than full HD. So that's pretty high def. I think we're going to need a few television upgrades to be able to actually see that kind of detail in motion. Yeah. But it is neat to see what Canon is doing. I wish they applied some of that technology to their current crop of cameras and actually released good quality cameras that I wanted to buy that could shoot video. But it is what it is. What do you guys think of this new sensor? This sensor here, is it? Do you think we're going to see this? Excuse me, in a camera in the future, or do you think it's going to be just kind of vaporware? Because there are cameras that shoot up to I think 100 megapixels, but what do you think?
I think I think it's great. I think that's really, really awesome. Like the 120 megapixel sensor, and I watched the demo video for it, and it was like, wow, my mind is blown. But at what point does that, if they're going to make something like this available to like the commercial or the prosumer market, like what is the actual application for something like that for a regular consumer, a prosumer, and even a professional image maker or producer? Like, I can see, okay, we need to, just for its crop factor alone, you could get some outrageously sharp imagery, or if you wanted to take that insane resolution and and render it back in 1080 for like an ultra crisp 1080 or even 4K image, that would be awesome. But beyond that, I'm struggling to understand what the point of these massive megapixel image sensors are beyond just like a huge, pixel swinging contest between the different camera makers.
You don't have your stuff premiere on IMAX theaters on a regular basis? Because I shoot all the time. It gets premiered at my local IMAX, and if you're not shooting at least
tougher and tougher to get
50
portfolio
megapixels, 6K or 8K minimum
all the
over
time.
there.
And the market is we've 4K, like UHD TVs are super affordable now. Like if you're in the market for televisions at all, they've become, 3-4 years ago, they were outrageously expensive, just like 1080p televisions. A decade before that were super expensive, just like anything that wasn't a tube television 20 years before that was super expensive. Like, the TV market's just, it's a race to the bottom. So the ubiquity of 4K it's there. Like, yeah, we're watching 4K, especially with video games. It's amazing. But at what point does like your 6K, your 8K, your 10K video format for like, say, home theater systems, like you just said, at what point is every person just going to have a giant projector in their backyard watching movies like on Friday nights?
I don't know.
Because that's the only instance in which something like a 10K image like would be at all beneficial, because a 10K image over a 55-inch television screen, your view to really fully appreciate that, your view distance from the screen would have to be about a half an inch.
Isn't that how everyone watches TV?
That's how I play video games, but that's a different story.
I watch all my content on the billboard, the big electronic billboard across the street from my house. That's how I absorb my content. So if it doesn't, if it's not formatted for a billboard, I don't watch it. Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking, 4K is great. I think we're going to see the jump to 8K here probably in the next 5 to 10 years. That will become the standard. But beyond that, 16K, I guess, is after that, but I just don't see it being really that compelling for people,
Yeah. I would say sports is basically the only application. I mean, sports is kind of the new porn, where that porn used to be the thing that would further like VHS versus beta, HD technology, internet, speeds, downloads, and things like that. But now, now you have things like, like the applications I see that for this immediately, especially with the things, soccer, football, European football, or is the fact that you can be able to have the wide cameras and be able to cut in on that frame. And whether that could limit the costs of like the sensor would be the thing, or you could zoom in. I mean, like the cool stuff you could do with it. Just that's kind of almost the only applications I see with it. Maybe just different sports. Soccer Makes the most sense for me, because then you could zoom in and kind of do, things. If you miss the frame on zooming in on it, then you could like do a flashback to the end or whatever.
Sure. Just a quick interjection and surveillance, because finally, like the fantasy that is CSI will become a reality, because when the directors keep saying enhance, they'll literally be like, okay, I got you. All right, we're at 60 times. That's as far as I can go. All right, I can see the whites of his eyes.
Whoa, you enhanced too much. Dehance.
Wait, I can see the license plate on the reflection of on his glasses. Hold on.
It is going to be reality. Flip that image of that teardrop. Reverse it.
Enhance more time.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely interesting stuff. I think for the, as mentioned, the Phase 1 has a 100 megapixel camera, so if you want that kind of resolution in stills, you can get it right now. And I can see the utility for stills, for sure. Even today, I mean, even though, 90% of the stuff is being absorbed via a cell phone, just having that there's never any part of me that's going to say, like, you know what, that's enough resolution. Quit giving me more resolution. I don't want any more resolution. Yeah. Everyone wants more resolution. So,
there is one of the problems though with all of this stuff is I literally I don't know if you noticed, like 20 minutes or so ago, my internet cut out and slowed down. I live in a rural area, and the internet hasn't caught up with that crap yet. So everybody's talking about 4K and 8K and 75, whatever, 120. And I go, that's great. I'm lucky if I get 720p on my streaming services. So the idea of buying
I was going to say, isn't that a larger issue with just our infrastructure in America with regard to our broadband infrastructure?
Well, I mean, part of it is that we just lost net neutrality. I don't know if you noticed, that was kind of a thing a couple of months ago. But so I used to live I tell this story, I think probably a dozen times. I used to live in Alaska because of geography and because of everything else. The speeds are great, but only two companies at least when I lived up there, existed that one did basically, high speed, which was, DSL, DSL speeds. And then the other one did, you had to pay per download. You had to pay per gig, basically. And so I was paying $150 a month for internet. And that was, I think, 30 gigs worth of download. You know how much, back in 2010, you know how much one episode of, I don't know, Friends was on Netflix? It's 500 megs. So I could watch like a season of a TV show streaming on Netflix, and then I'd be out. And I just paid 5 times the cost of the box set for it. So like that's like one of the reasons why like physical media still exists, is because like, I mean, that's literally one of the, like, Alaska right now is mourning the loss of one of their Fairbanks, Alaska is mourning the loss, I think it was Fairbanks, of one of their blockbuster videos still. There's still like, I think 2 more up there. And so one of the problems with all this tech is that we have to actually have an internet that people can enjoy it on, and stream it on. And we don't have that. I mean, even our cable, we're probably not going to get fiber ever, honestly, ever. Like, at least in my lifetime. So it's like, we don't even have that. I mean, what is Zuckerberg is promising we're going to have drones and blimps flying around, giving us high-speed internet, but yeah, wait for that to happen. But,
you just got to sell all your personal data. That's all.
And I think so. Like looking, I feel like just like the sheer numbers of resolutions. The last thing I'll say on it. What I'm really excited about is the possibility that we're like major camera companies are developing these super dense, super large mega sensor, and what we're going software.
There's that bandwidth
and machine learning. Yeah, here we go. Am I breaking up right now?
a little bit, but say what you just said. Like, go back 10 seconds.
So we're going to see, like, just the combination of these extremely high density megapixel image sensors with this emerging software and machine learning algorithms and all this other stuff. And what I'm really excited about is to eventually have a smartphone one day, an affordable smartphone that shoots like
Oh, Matt. I think we lost him.
thank you, Internet, for proving my point about the...
Yeah, indeed. All right, okay, guys. Hey, put all those 100 megapixel sensors back on the bus. We're not delivering them. Internet's not good in America. Put them back on the ship, send them back to South Korea and Japan where they can actually use them.
Yep.
We were just joking about your internet speed and your bandwidth, Matt. I think his wife
my back. You guys hear me?
Is sabotaging it to kind of prevent him from embedding. I think that's what it is. He's downloading some Netflix while he's trying to do his show.
Yeah. Someone's probably streaming Netflix downstairs. We don't have the best internet connection. Can you guys hear me now, though? Am I good?
You're good. Matt, we're gonna.
Okay.
I think the future is great, and I think once I have a 120 megapixel sensor in my cell phone, I will be happy. My life will be complete, and I can die happy. But I want to unless there's anything else you want to talk about specifically about technology, I did want to address a question posed by Alex, and this is kind of interesting to me as well. You're out there, you're in the field, you're in a combat environment. What is your camera gear setup rig look like on your body? How are you equipping yourself? What kind of combat tactical camera gear setup do you have?
So it's really, really simple. I've gone with a couple of different gear items. I've relied on Hazard 4 to store my 70 to 200. So I have my flak jacket and I have a gear belt on. And what I do is I have a 1-point sling typically reserved for a rifle. You put like the male end on the end of the buttstock and you put the female end around your flak jacket. You connect it. So I use that for my camera on my left side here. My camera stays there and it's attached, secured with a carabiner. And I have my rifle slung with a 2-point sling around my right so I can actually shoulder it. So I have that system going on, and I usually have a big admin pouch right here on my chest where I can keep a 50 mil or a 24 to 70, and I can keep a 70 to 200 on my hip in like my little Hazard 4 pouch, which was like super convenient. Like I can't say enough about that little pouch. Hazard 4 is great. Send me stuff, please. And So yeah, that's basically like my basic setup. So if I ever had to switch between the camera and the rifle, which this last deployment I never did, we didn't get into any contact. We didn't take IDF or indirect fire or anything like that. But if it came down to that, I was able to switch back and forth. Now, that's on a deployment when I'm in the field regularly, just like in CONUS, we're out in the middle of the woods in North Carolina. I'm in a flak, I'm in a Kevlar, I'm in my proper protective equipment, but I usually don't have a rifle on me. So I still usually keep my camera on my 1-point sling, and I'll just be slinging a tripod over my shoulder and just running to and from, just making sure I'm out of the way. I'm not, interfering with the training, or if there's any live fire stuff going on. There's a lot of conversations between me and the Marines that I'm photographing beforehand, like, hey, this is where I'd like to be. Where can I be? It's just a lot of kind of pre-planning just to make sure that I'm not being unsafe and that I'm not interfering with what they're actually doing.
I tell you, the worst part of having, the camera gear and the weapons on you at the same time is when I'm shooting with my M16 and I go to reload and I grab a lens. I'm like, oh, jeez, I grabbed the lens instead of another magazine.
No, I grabbed the. I was.
That's the one.
I was going to make a 50 millimeter joke, but I don't know any of the other ones. So
I just like a bandolier of lenses. That's what I want, a bandolier. A question was posed.
Is that
here.
what CS has? He has that like vest thing that he just pulls out lenses and laptops and.
Well, I've got the Think Tank. The waist belt system with the different pouches that I use, sometimes. I've never tried Hazard 4 before, but is this okay? We're doing a little show and tell here. Matt's going to show off his kit.
Mags, and this is just my admin pouch isn't there, but yeah, and I just keep my camera on this little sling here. Anyway,
how does Hazard 4 compare to Think Tank or f-stop gear? If you've used any of that.
I haven't used any of it. I'm sorry.
Okay, no worries. Sorry, Alex. To answer your question, go F off.
All right, Alex.
Anyways, but okay, F-stop, Hazard 4. All right, we're going to have to bug them for some equipment, and we'll test it on the show. Matt, we're nearing the end of our show. Would like to throw it and give you the opportunity to either promote yourself or promote anything you would like. So where can people find you at, first of all?
Excuse me. Yeah, you can find me at my website. It's callahanvisual.com. It's 2 L's in Callahan, and you can find me on Instagram at galactic_warfighters or my military page, Warfighter Frames.
Nice. And you can also find him on divotshub.net. Just search Matthew Callahan. See all your military work, right? Check out your portfolio page on DivotHub.
They made it so hard to find that now. It's crazy.
Really?
I don't know if you've been on time recently, but it's hard to navigate.
And when do you get out? When will you be a free man?
I exit the active duty service in August 28th. I'll go on terminal in the middle of July.
Wow. I went. I left the military in the Marine Corps. I left July 4th. Was my EAS.
Okay.
So.
What year was that?
That was 2007.
Fantastic.
So back in the day. Were you even in the Marine Corps at that time?
Nope. I was about a year from even knowing that I was going to be in the Marine Corps.
Wow. All right, man. Well, good luck to you out in the real world. I hope you find all that you are looking for and all your dreams come true. Zach, is there anything you'd like to push before we should end the show?
I'm just pushing the fact that I feel really ripped off. I think I paid like $165 for almost the exact same jacket at REI. That's like $116 here at Hazard 4. So, I might be checking out tactical gear in the future. So yeah,
there you go. Matt,
that's about it right now.
You got competition for that embed job.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that'll be a while. I have to do some training for that one. No one's going to want me in their group.
Just go into a sand pit and do some leg lifts, and that's about the same thing. I would like to promote a video I did. I did an unboxing of some Nikon 1 camera gear. So if you are interested at all about the Nikon 1 camera system, it's a micro four thirds mirrorless camera system that Nikon makes. I had never heard of it up until I did the unboxing, so I am actually kind of learning about their camera system right now. So you can see me opening. If you like opening boxes or like watching people open boxes, there you go. That'll be your fix. I open up 5 boxes, and I'll probably write a review or my thoughts on the camera itself. It's a neat little thing. I don't know how it compares to other mirrorless cameras like my GH series, but I'm looking forward to trying it out. Anyways, that's
awesome.
That's it for the show this week. Matt, thank you so much for taking time and being on. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, David. I appreciate it.
You're always welcome back, and I definitely want to have you back on when you get out there in the real world and kind of get your impressions and see how you're doing. Scary stuff. I know when I jumped ship, it was tough. It was tough, but I'm sure you'll do fine. For Zach Roberts, I am David J. Murphy. This has been Around the Lens, episode 118, and we are out.